Welcome to Adult Sleep Stories, where your day ends and your dreams begin. Tonight, let go of the noise, slow your breath, and follow the sound of my voice into a world beyond the ordinary. This is your time to unwind, drift deeply, and dream wildly. Let's begin. Take a deep breath. Let your shoulders soften. Let the weight of the day melt into the ground beneath you. This is your time now. A moment for stillness, for letting go, for drifting. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Feel the hush of twilight settling in. Imagine the cool breeze off the lake brushing against your skin, and the rhythmic lap of water on ancient rocks grounding you in this moment. The world slows here. The noise fades. Tonight, you're going somewhere timeless, to a place where the water remembers everything and the heart finds what it has always been searching for. Now, sink into the calm. Let the story carry you. This is Held by the Ancient Lake. I always walked the lake when I needed to feel something real. Lake Superior doesn't lie. She doesn't hurry or flatter or pretend. She watches. She remembers. Some days she's as calm as glass. Others, she crashes so hard against the rocks that you feel it in your ribs. But always, she's there, waiting. I've always walked the lake when I needed to feel something real. Lake Superior doesn't lie. She doesn't hurry or flatter or pretend. She watches. She remembers. Some days she's as calm as glass. Others, she crashes so hard against the rocks that you can feel it in your ribs. But always, she's there, waiting. I live in a small apartment up the hill from the Lakewalk in Duluth. It's not much, just 2 rooms, hardwood floors, and the same wind-stained windows I never quite get clean. But it's mine. Duluth is carved into the hillside, with the lake at its feet like an offering. It's a city that smells like wood smoke and fire, with streets that slope so sharply it feels like you're always leaning into something. Cargo ships glide in and out like ghosts. The lift bridge raises its steel arms like a slow-motion hem. There's beauty here, not flashy or eager, but steady, deep. The kind that finds you when you're not looking. And the lake, she's everything. She shapes the weather, the mood, the breath of the city. On foggy mornings, she disappears entirely, and the world turns to mist and hush. On sunlit afternoons, she flashes silver and blue, daring you to look too long. Even in winter, when ice laces her edges and snow muffles the docks, she pulses beneath it all. Most evenings, I lace up my boots, tuck my hair into my hood, and walk down the hill toward the water. I've done it so often, I know the sound of the gulls from the east and the difference in wind before a storm. I know the scent of wet stone, the faint mineral tang that clings to my coat. The Lakewalk stretches for miles, winding past the harbor, the lighthouse, the rose garden. I've walked every inch of it, sometimes with music in my ears, sometimes in silence. I pass joggers, tourists, teenagers with ice cream, but I always feel alone in the best way. Alone like the lake is keeping me company. And lately, I've felt something else too. Something waiting. Like the lake knows a secret it hasn't told me yet. I don't tell anyone about the dreams. They wouldn't understand. It always begins the same. A stretch of the Lakewalk near the lighthouse, empty but glowing in golden twilight. I'm walking, and I'm barefoot. The sky is lavender, and someone is there, just up ahead, standing still. I can never see his face, but I know his shape. Tall, dark hair curled at the nape of his neck. Hands in his coat pockets, like he's been waiting a long, long time. Every time I reach for him, I wake up. Every time I try to speak, the lake answers instead. It's why I keep walking the shoreline. Not because I think he's there, but because, what if he is? The day it happened, the sky was bruised with cloud cover. One of those strange late spring evenings where the air smelled like snow even though it was already June. The lake was restless, choppy but not angry. Wind curling in off the water, brushing hair into my mouth no matter how tightly I tucked it into my coat. I walked past the rose garden, past the benches where couples held hands or stared at their phones, past the silver arch of the aerial lift bridge, until I reached the quieter stretch. The part where the beach starts to outnumber the tourists, and the water laps gentler against ancient sand. That's where I saw him. Standing at the edge of the paved path, his back to me. Just like the dream. Tall, dark hair tousled in the wind, a dark coat, hands in his pockets. The moment stopped me mid-step. I should have looked away or walked past, but I didn't. I just watched. He turned then, slowly, as if he felt me there all along. And when his eyes met mine, I forgot how to breathe. They were the palest blue I'd ever seen. Not icy, not cold, but alive, like light shining through deep water. And something in my chest, something old, pulled tight. "You found me," he said, like it was a greeting and a confirmation all at once. I blinked. "Do I know you?" He smiled, soft, knowing, sad. "Not in this life," he said. A wind gusted off the lake, whipping between us, but I didn't move, and neither did he. There was something electric in the space between our feet, like the air itself remembered us. "I've seen you before," I whispered. "I know," he said. "I've seen you too." We just stood there, just watching each other. I didn't ask his name. He didn't ask mine. The moment we didn't need names. What it needed was stillness. What it needed was the lake. We walked without speaking, side by side. His steps matched mine as if we'd done this many times before. The lake was quieter here, the water nudging gently across the beach. A freighter passed in the distance, its low hum spreading across the surface like a spell. I wanted to say something, ask who he was, where he came from, what he meant by not in this life. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I glanced sideways at him. He looked timeless. Not in the cliche way, not in some polished movie star kind of beautiful, but in the way old souls carry themselves, like they know things, like they've lost and loved and lived through it all. And those crystal blue eyes, they weren't just striking, they were familiar. As if I'd looked into them once while dying and again while being born. Why now? I asked quietly, not even sure what I meant. He didn't look at me, he just kept his eyes on the horizon. Because you were ready, he said. We reached a low stone wall and stopped. He leaned against it and I mirrored him, both of us staring out across the expanse of Superior. The lake was a sheet of steel and shimmer. She's older than time, he said. Some say she's the last of the true waters, the ones that remember. Remember what? He turned to me slowly. Us. My chest fluttered, not like nerves, not like flirtation, like grief and love and home, all wrapped up into one ache. Have we done this before? I asked. Yes, he said, in different clothes, different bodies, but always here. I swallowed, and the wind shifted again. And how does it end? I asked, even though I already knew. He exhaled slowly, eyes on the water. The same way it always does. We stayed there, leaning against the low wall, watching the water stretch endlessly towards the horizon. The Lakewalk was quiet now. Most people had gone home, the city pulling its coat tighter as the evening cooled. Tell me something true, I said. He turned to me, smiling faintly. You already know all the true things. You just forget between lifetimes. I let that settle, let it echo. The moment felt both fragile and vast. Then remind me, I said. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out, a small, smooth stone. He turned it in his fingers and then held it out to me. I took it, warm from his hand, dark gray with a faint swirl of white, like the surface of the lake in a storm. You gave it to me the first time, he said. You said it reminded you of your heartbeat. I stared at the stone, a strange chill moving through me. I didn't remember. Not exactly, but somewhere in my ribs, I knew. Do you ever remember everything? I asked. He shook his head. Only pieces, feelings, the way your voice sounds when you're half asleep, the shape of your laugh. He looked at me, then truly looked at me, and my whole body warmed underneath his gaze. And your eyes, he added. I never forget your eyes. I smiled, small and shaky. You said that last time too. A gull cried overhead. The wind lifted my hair across my face, and before I could brush it back, he reached out and tucked it behind my ear. His fingers lingered for a moment against my cheek, then my jaw, as if relearning what time had erased. I don't want this to be the end, I whispered. He nodded, sadness swimming in those brilliant eyes. It never is. It just changes form. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But mostly, I wanted to stay. With him, with the wind, with the lake. In this exact moment that felt suspended outside of everything. His eyes were like Lake Superior. I didn't think about the line. I didn't say it out loud. But the words bloomed inside me like a memory coming home. We left the wall and walked again, slow, unhurried, like we were borrowing time. The sky deepened into cobalt. Streetlights along the Lakewalk blinked on, one by one, casting golden halos in the mist. The water glimmered in silence beside us. Do you believe in fate? I asked. He hesitated, then said, I believe in returns. I nodded, letting the words nest in my chest. And what are we? I asked. A return? He looked over at me. We're the thing that keeps finding itself. That made something shift in me. Some buried thing that had always been longed to be found, not by a person, but by a truth. So why only once? I asked. He stopped walking and turned to me. Because the lake doesn't give forever. She gives moments, deep ones, wide enough to hold an entire life, but not longer than a night. I stepped in close, heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. But this feels like forever. And that's how you know it's real, he said. It feels eternal, but it only asks for now. His words were both anchor and heartbreak. And still, I didn't step back. We stood there as the night folded fully around us. The lake darkened, a mirror of sky. No waves, no sound, just silence. The kind of silence that waits. The kind of silence that knows something sacred is happening. Where will you go? I asked. Where I always go, he said softly. Somewhere just beyond remembering. I reached for his hand, fingers sliding against his. He gripped mine, firm and warm and steady. Then stay, I said, just till morning. He nodded, and that was all it took. We didn't need plans. We didn't need maps. We just needed to be near the lake one last time. He led me down the narrow steps that curved beneath the bluff, the part of the Lakewalk where fewer people go, where the trail turns to crushed stone and the birch trees arch overhead like a vaulted ceiling. We walked in silence, the kind of silence that holds too much to speak. I could hear the water to our right, brushing against the rocks like it was pacing. When we reached the bottom, he pulled a blanket from his bag, wool worn at the edges, and spread it out on a flat patch of stone near the shore. The lake was only a few feet away, glinting with moonlight. We sat close. His thigh touched mine. My shoulder brushed his as I leaned into him. Neither of us said, "I don't want this to end." It was already in the air between us. He tilted his head back to look at the stars. "You always fall asleep before me," he said with a soft smile. "That sounds right," I whispered. "And you always say you won't this time." I laughed. "I mean it every time." The stars flickered above like they were remembering us too. He took my hand and laid it on his chest. His heartbeat was steady. I closed my eyes and let my body melt against his. We didn't kiss, not yet. We just breathed together, like a single, slow rhythm. "Do you know what this lake is?" he asked quietly. I turned to him. "It's the place the soul rests when it is between things, between lives, between dreams, between grief and healing." I shivered, not from cold, but from the truth of it. "Then what are we?" "We're the pause," he said, "the exhale before everything changes." I curled into him, my hair brushing his collar. He wrapped his arms around me, and we stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in wool, lake air, and something deeper than time. At some point, the world disappeared. No more cars passing up above, no footsteps on the path, just the water, the trees, the hush of night curling around us like a second blanket. He ran his hand slowly along my back, not possessive, not rushed, like he was remembering me through touch. I looked up at him, the soft moonlight catching the edge of his cheekbone, the line of his jaw. He looked down and our foreheads touched, the kind of closeness that makes time stutter. "What do I feel like to you?" I asked, my voice barely above a breath. He didn't answer right away. He traced a line down my arm, then laced his fingers through mine. "You feel like home," he said. "You feel like the thing I spend my whole life missing, and I don't even know I'm missing it until I see you." My eyes burned, not from sadness, but from this unbearable rightness of it. We kissed then, finally, and it was not like the kind of kiss that begins something. It was the kind of kiss that knows. A reunion, a remembering. His hands cupped my face like I was something he'd prayed to find again. And I kissed him back like I'd found the part of me I thought I'd lost in some distant century. The lake moved beside us, slow and steady, witness. And overhead, the stars blinked in time with our breath. After the kiss, we didn't speak. There was nothing to explain, nothing to ask. The lake, the stars, the earth beneath us, they already knew. He brushed my hair back and kissed the hollow between my collarbones, slow and reverent, like someone placing a stone in sacred water. I breathed him in, the scent of wind and wood smoke, and something I could only call home. His hands moved over me with intention, slow, assured, as if guided not by thought but by memory. I didn't feel nervous or unsure. I felt known. I touched his chest, the curve of his ribs, the warmth of his skin just beneath the collar of his shirt. He shivered beneath my palm and whispered my name like it was the first time he'd said it in centuries. And maybe it was. We undressed one layer at a time, not to expose, but to return to the versions of ourselves that had always lived beneath. We lay back on the blanket, bodies pressed together and the lake sighing beside us, as we moved in the rhythm of something ancient. No urgency, no expectation, just two souls meeting where they'd always meant to. The night curved around us like a cradle, and for a moment, a long, breathless, shimmering moment, it felt like we had always been here and would never leave. I don't know how long we lay there afterward. Time didn't feel real anymore. The moon had shifted slightly. The lake had grown quieter. He lay on his back, one arm behind his head, the other resting on my hip. I traced circles on his chest, breathing in the silence between us. "Will you remember this?" I asked. He turned his head slowly. "I'll feel it, even when I can't name it." I nodded, eyes stinging again. "Me too." We watched the sky together, neither of us speaking as a meteor streaked faintly across the starscape. He sat up eventually, and he reached into the pocket of his coat, pulled out a small object wrapped in linen. "This is for you," he said, gently placing it in my hand. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a ring, simple, silver, weathered. An engraving curled along the inside edge. I squinted, heart lurching. It read, "Return to the shore." "You gave it to me once," he said, "a long time ago. I kept it." I couldn't speak. I just slipped it onto my finger and closed my eyes. The wind picked up off the lake, brushing the hair from my shoulders. I turned towards the water, watching the way the moonlight painted it in silver and ink. I took a stone from the blanket, smooth, round, and black, and held it tightly. "Let's leave this one," I whispered. He nodded. We walked down to the edge together, barefoot, the chill of the lake biting at our toes. I knelt, kissed the stone, and placed it gently in the shallows. The waves licked it at once, then pulled it slightly deeper, like they knew. "One day," I said softly, "someone will find it." "Maybe it'll be us," he said. I looked up at him, and for the first time, let the tears come. Dawn was beginning to break, just a thread of light on the farthest edge of the horizon. The kind of light that doesn't warm yet, just whispers it's time. We sat on the blanket again, shoulder to shoulder, watching the pale gray tint the sky. Neither of us reached for each other this time. We didn't need to. The closeness had moved inside of us now, woven into breath, into bone. "What happens next?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "We go." "Just like that?" He nodded. I looked down at my hands in my lap, at the silver ring catching the soft blue of morning. "Will we ever?" He turned towards me, eyes soft and unflinching. "Yes, in a dream, in a story you'll hear and think sounds familiar, in the face of someone who pauses just a second too long when they pass you on the street." I bit my lip, heart cracking open at the seams. "And if I forget?" I whispered. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Then the lake will remember for you." I closed my eyes. The wind lifted again, this time warmer, brushing against my cheek like a hand I couldn't see. When I opened them, he was standing. I rose too. We folded the blanket together, slow and careful, like it was the closing of a sacred book. We didn't kiss goodbye. We didn't say farewell. He pressed his forehead to mine for one long breath, then stepped back and walked away. Not fast, not with regret, just gone. I didn't watch him leave. I turned to the lake instead, let it fill my eyes, my lungs, my chest. Let it hold what I couldn't say. The lake was different that morning. Not louder, not brighter, but heavier, like it had taken something in, like it had swallowed a secret and it was holding it just beneath the surface. I walked slowly back up the path and the city was just starting to stir behind me. Coffee shops opening, joggers tracing their morning routes. Life was moving forward, but I was not the same. I could feel the difference in my breath, in the way my feet touched the earth, as if my center of gravity had shifted, drawn more deeply toward the lake than ever before. In the days that followed, I tried to return to the rhythm of things. Work, errands, phone calls. I laughed at the right times, answered texts, went to sleep, but I was always listening. Not with my ears, with something quieter. And in the wind, when it rolled in from the lake and brushed against my window at night, I heard him. Not his voice exactly, but the knowing of him. That echo you feel when someone says your name in a dream. That weightless tug that reminds you you are loved even when alone. I walked the Lakewalk every evening, not to find him, not really, but to remember what I was made of. Water, story, and one long eternal thread of returning. Weeks passed, then months. The weather shifted, soft June warmed into golden July, then cooled again as August crept toward fall. The lake changed too, its moods more unpredictable, its light slanting sharper with each passing evening. And still I walked, always to the same spot. Sometimes I brought a book and sometimes a coffee, but mostly I brought the memory of him. I wore the ring on a thin chain around my neck, not always visible, not always touched, but always felt. One late afternoon, as summer exhaled its last warm breath, I walked to the rocky bend near the birches, the place we left the stone. I sat, knees tucked beneath me, and watched the water. A freighter groaned in the distance. Children laughed somewhere behind me on the path. But everything else, the wind, the trees, the lake, was quiet. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small notebook, the one I'd started the morning after he left. It was full now, with sketches, with lines of poetry, with fragments of dreams I was too scared to forget. I flipped to the first page and read the words I'd scrawled in a rush that first dawn. His eyes were like Lake Superior. Just that, but it was enough. I closed the book and pressed it to my chest. The wind picked up, curling around my shoulders. I smiled. I remember, I whispered. I always will. It was autumn when the dream returned, not a flash or a memory, a full, immersive echo. I was standing at the edge of the Lakewalk again, wind soft, sky violet, the trees just beginning to let go of their leaves. And there he was, not aged, not changed, just there, tall, dark hair brushing his collar, crystal eyes holding that same depth, that same knowing. You remembered, he said. I laughed, a sound that vibrated through the dream. You don't think I would? I hoped, he said. Hoping is what we do between lives. I walked to him and he opened his arms. As I stepped in, the lake behind us shimmered. What is this? I asked. Is it real? He kissed my forehead. It's real enough, he whispered. I closed my eyes and let the feeling flood through me of being held by him, of knowing where I end and he begins, and realizing there's no difference at all. The air sparkled faintly with something like gold dust. The water swayed without sound. How long do we have? I asked. Not long. Then let's stay still. And we did. Just breathing, just holding, in a dream that felt like forever. And it might have been. I woke slowly, my cheek still warm from where he had kissed me in my dream. The room was quiet, only the hum of the radiator and the low murmur of the lake through the window. I sat up in bed, the early light slanting across the floor like a path. My hand drifted to the chain around my neck. The ring was still there, cool against my skin. I closed my eyes and whispered his name. I didn't say it often, not out loud, not even in my mind. It wasn't that I didn't want to. It was that his name held too much, like it might summon him or dissolve me. The wind picked up gently outside, brushing against the windows, catching the edge of the curtain and lifting it just slightly. A familiar feeling stirred in my chest, like the beginning of something, or the return of something too vast to name. I rose, dressed quickly, and left the apartment without checking the time. My feet found their way back to the Lakewalk like they always did, past the rose garden, past the quiet coffee cart just opening its window, past the stretch where the birch trees arched and the city's noise slipped away. The water was glowing, though the sun had barely risen. I sat on the same stone wall we'd once leaned against together and waited. Not for him exactly, for the feeling, for the knowing that he was still with me, woven into the wind, stitched into the wave, resting in the ancient memory of the water. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out another stone, smooth, pale gray, marked with a single white line like a ripple. I walked to the edge of the shore and knelt. "Find him," I whispered to the lake, "like you always do." I placed the stone in the water and watched it disappear. Not sink, disappear. The stone was gone, swallowed by the shallows without a sound, like the lake had been waiting for it. I stayed crouched there, watching the water shift and gleam as the first rays of sunlight crept across the surface. It was still, not in a lifeless way, in the way something ancient knows how to rest. I stayed like that for a long time, long enough for the shadows to stretch, for the city to stir awake behind me, for the gulls to start circling above. But I didn't move. Something in my bones told me this stillness mattered, that this moment, this breath, this quiet watching, it was part of the remembering. The wind swept gently along the surface of the lake, and I thought, maybe this is what he meant, that not all love stories end in goodbye. Some of them just go still. They find shape in the silence, they take root in the calm, and in the mirror of still water, I saw us. Not our bodies, not our features, just the feeling, like a shadow and its echo, a rhythm only the soul could hear. I rose from the water's edge, my knees stiff from kneeling, my palms damp with dew and memory. The lake didn't speak. It never does, but it always answers. And that morning, the answer was peace. Not the kind that fixes everything, but the kind that lets you breathe inside the ache. I slowly walked along the Lakewalk, the rising sun casting long, soft shadows over the trail. A jogger passed with music in her ears. A couple walked a dog. The world was already slipping into motion. But I wasn't part of the rush. I moved like driftwood, carried along the edges of something deeper. And as I walked, I thought about him, not with desperation, not with sorrow, but with that quiet ache that comes from knowing someone so fully and still letting them go. I remembered the way he touched my hair. I remember the way he said my name in the dream, the way the stars held their breath while we kissed. And I thought, maybe we don't need forever. Maybe a moment can stretch wide enough to hold an entire life. Maybe a night can echo through every cell of the body for the rest of time. Maybe we are all just currents in a larger tide, drifting apart and returning again and again and again. That evening, I brought my journal to the lake again. The wind had picked up, tugging at the corners of my coat, but the air was still warm enough to stay a while. I settled onto a bench near the bluff, the same one where I'd watched the water on the day we met. The pages of my journal fluttered in the breeze as I opened it. My handwriting had changed over months. It had become softer and slower, like I was no longer writing to remember, but to release. I picked up my pen and began to write without thinking. Not a poem, not a letter, just a truth that wanted to come through. The lake is old because she keeps our stories. She folds them into waves, buries them in sand, braids them into driftwood, and sometimes she gives them back in the shape of a dream or a man with crystal blue eyes who knows your name before you say it. I paused, let the wind read it with me. The water moved differently that evening, as if stirred by something deeper beneath. And I wondered, how many people had stood here before me? How many had whispered names into the air or kissed someone who felt like a memory? How many had been held just once by someone who never left them? The lake knew. Of course she did. That was her gift. She didn't keep the moments from us. She let us live inside them again and again until we finally understood that love isn't lost. It's just carried forward like water. The snow came early that year, just a dusting, a whisper of white on the rooftops, a soft veil over the Lakewalk. I bundled into my coat and boots and made my way down the familiar hill. The air had that scent, fresh, electric, like something beginning again. The lake was half still, half stirring, rimmed in frost and rimlight. The horizon blurred into a soft gray sky, and the trees stood bare but unafraid. I stopped at the bend in the trail where the birches leaned toward the water. I stood there, breathing, letting the cold fill my lungs, letting the memory settle into the quiet between heartbeats. This had always been our place, even before I met him, even before I knew. This was the place I returned to when something needed to be found or let go. I sat on the low stone wall, the same one where he first turned to me. I closed my eyes and listened. The waves were soft, the wind hummed low, and beneath it all, there was that pulse, the one that only the soul hears. Return. I opened my eyes and looked out at the water. It looked back. The lake doesn't need promises. It doesn't ask us to stay. It simply waits. And when we're ready, it welcomes us home. Winter deepened. The lake froze in places, and the wind took on a sharper voice. But I kept walking, always to the same spot, always with the same quiet expectancy. Not to see him again, but to remember the part of myself he helped awaken. Some mornings I brought coffee in a thermos and sat by the shore for hours, letting the cold bite at my cheeks, letting the world move without me. I watched snow fall into the water and disappear without a sound. I listened for gulls that didn't come. I waited for something that wasn't meant to arrive because it never left. And in the hush, I began to feel it. The way love stretches. How it doesn't die when the moment ends. It becomes the moment. How it tucks itself between the waves. How it floats on the skin of memory. How it hums in the stillness of knowing. Sometimes I'd whisper his name to the water. Just once, not as a summons, but as a thank you for the night, for the remembering, for the ache that softened me. I didn't expect the lake to answer, and yet it always did. In the shape of a breeze, in the call of a distant loon, in the silver light bending just across the water, love lives there between the waves. Spring returned as it always does, slowly, almost shyly. The snow melted into the ground, feeding the roots beneath the birch trees. The wind softened, trading its bite for a cool, briny kiss. And the lake began to move again, fully awake. I stood at the edge of the water one quiet morning, the sky pale blue above, the trail behind me empty. The surface rippled for a new life. But deeper down, beneath the shimmer and the sway, there was the same old song. The one I heard that night, the one I'd known my whole life. Even before I met him. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I'm still here." And the lake whispered back, "So am I." The memory of him rose gently behind my eyes, not sharp or painful, but full and warm. I saw him standing there, coat brushing his knees, dark hair tousled, eyes brighter than any sky. His eyes were like Lake Superior, not just for their color, but for what they held. Depth, stillness, story, and the echo of every life we'd lived together. I pressed a hand to my chest, to the place where the silver ring now rested directly against my skin, and I smiled. Not because it was over, but because I'd been given something no ending could ever take. Love that lived outside of time, a memory written in water, a soul where I could meet again and again, always here, held by the ancient lake.